Some truths remain buried. Some stories, half-whispered across generations, refuse to die. And some are scratched into time by trembling hands who dared to speak of what they saw. This is a journey into 5 of the most disturbing, unexplained events in modern history, told as they were remembered, or perhaps as they remembered us. Welcome to Echoes from the Void. The wind in the Ural Mountains carries 1,000 forgotten names. It whispers between pines and rock, skimming over frozen rivers. But on one bitter night in February 1959, it carried something else. 9 hikers, fit, smart, experienced, set out for the Otorten Peak, deep in the Russian wilderness. All were students or graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They'd done treks like this before. They were prepared for the cold, the altitude, the solitude. What they were not prepared for was whatever found them there. Before the silence fell, there were photographs, black and white snapshots of snowball fights, shared cigarettes, a guitar. Diaries captured their jokes and worries. The final entry, dated February 1st, ends with a note about setting up camp on a slope they called Death Mountain. 2 weeks later, they were all dead. Search parties found the tent first. Half buried in snow, collapsed and eerily quiet. The fabric had been slashed from the inside, not unzipped, not pushed open, cut, jagged and wide, like someone had crawled their way out, fast, in total panic. Footprints trailed from the tent into the woods, barefoot, bare-chested. Some were only in underwear. There were no signs of struggle, no tracks from outsiders, just those 9. And then, nothing. 2 bodies were found under a cedar tree, curled around a half-burned fire. Their fingers charred black, flesh splintered from frostbite, their eyes wide open, as if they died looking at something we were never meant to see. 3 more bodies stretched across the path between that tree and the tent. Frozen mid-crawl, their limbs twisted, mouths half open, as if trying to shout something. But the last 4, those were different. They were buried deeper in the snow. 2 had shattered ribs, 1 a crushed skull. Yet no external wounds, no bruises, no abrasions. It was, the coroner said, as if the injuries had been inflicted by a car crash, with no visible trauma to the skin. 1 woman's body was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her face. The tissue around her mouth was unusually distorted. It wasn't animals. No scavenger tracks, just sterile snow and silence. Autopsies revealed strange clues. Some of the victims' clothing was radioactive. The Soviet investigators documented this but offered no explanation. Eventually, the official conclusion was this: an unknown compelling force. That's it. No name, no cause, just 9 closed coffins and sealed files. Rumors came fast. Military experiments, secret weapons, paranormal entities, indigenous curses. Some said the group heard something that night, a frequency, an unbearable noise that triggered a kind of madness. Others claimed missile tests went wrong. Some blamed infrasound, a low-frequency hum that unsettles the brain, driving people into terror. But maybe there was nothing to blame. Maybe the mountain wanted silence, and it took it. To this day, hikers speak of strange winds in the area. Sounds like voices, like footsteps pacing in fresh snow. Some say they see lights in the distance at night, moving without pattern, too low to be stars. And sometimes, just sometimes, they hear something calling. No one camps on that slope anymore. Los Angeles, January 2013. A city of noise and sunshine. But downtown, amidst the cracked sidewalks of Skid Row, a storm was building. At its center, a girl named Elisa Lamb. She arrived in LA alone, just 21, a Canadian student on a soul-searching trip along the West Coast. Her Tumblr was filled with poetry, musings on love and loneliness, and snapshots of bookshops, cafes, strangers in the rain. She was clever, self-aware, but fragile, diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Sometimes she mentioned feeling lost. Sometimes she disappeared online for days. She checked into the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil, wasn't just any hotel. Built in the 1920s as a glamorous destination for the elite, it had since decayed into a place of shadows. The walls had witnessed suicides, overdoses, even serial killers. The Night Stalker Richard Ramirez stayed there. So did Jack Unterweger. Locals called the building cursed. Elisa's family worried. She phoned home every day. Until suddenly, she didn't. On February 1st, she vanished. Police searched the hotel. No sign. Flyers went up. Her face appeared on TV. Guests reported strange odors, odd water pressure, a bitter taste in the taps. Days passed. Then came the elevator footage. It spread across the internet like a virus. A grainy, black and white video from a hotel security camera. Dated January 31st. There's Elisa alone stepping inside. She presses buttons. The door doesn't close. She peeks outside, then back in, hides in the corner, steps out, in again. She waves her hands strangely, like underwater, talks to someone. No one is there. Then she's gone. People watched and rewatched. Theories exploded. Was she being followed? Drugged? Possessed? 1 week later, a hotel maintenance worker climbed to the roof. He opened the lid of one of the 4 water tanks. Inside, the body of Elisa Lam, naked, floating face up in the dark. The tank was sealed. No ladder. No footprints on the rooftop. The alarm system hadn't gone off. How did she get there? Her clothes, found at the bottom, were covered in a sand-like sediment. The coroner ruled the death an accidental drowning, but questions remained. Why didn't the hotel notice sooner? Could she have closed the tank from the inside? If she was suffering a psychotic episode, how did she gain roof access at all? Some claim her death was influenced by something darker. Paranormal forces, ritualistic symbolism, or a shadow entity captured by that elevator camera, a presence blurred between the frames. But there's more. In 2013, a deadly outbreak of tuberculosis hit Skid Row. The test kits used to detect it, they were labeled Elisa. A coincidence? Or some glitch in fate's design? Conspiracy theorists connected dots no one had drawn. Her behavior mimics footage from Korean horror films. Her name mirrors a test for disease. The Cecil sits at the center of occult hotspots in LA. But in the end, all that was left was silence. And shadows. The hotel drained the water tank, cleaned the pipes, renovated the floors. Today, it goes by another name. But they say, if you ride the elevator alone late at night, sometimes it still stops on the wrong floor. And if the door doesn't close, wait. Don't step out. There is a house on Ocean Avenue. Number 112. White wood, dark shutters, and those unmistakable quarter-moon attic windows, staring like eyes into the dark. They say it's just a house. But houses remember. It began with a murder. November 13th, 1974. Amityville, Long Island. The DeFeo family, father, mother, and 4 children, were shot dead in their beds. All of them face down as if asleep. No signs of struggle. No cries heard by neighbors. Just silence. Ronald DeFeo Jr., the eldest son, confessed. He claimed voices in the house had told him to do it. Demonic voices, whispering. 1 year later, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house. They knew the story. The real estate agent told them. But the price, it was too good to pass up. They moved in with their 3 children and their dog, Harry. They lasted 28 days. What happened in those 4 weeks has been told 100 different ways. But this is how it begins. Day 1. The air in the house feels heavy. A priest visits to bless the home. As he sprinkles holy water, he hears a voice, deep and guttural, whisper, "Get out." He does. Day 3. Doors slam in the middle of the night. Windows open on their own. The children complain of cold spots. George begins waking every night at 3:15 a.m., the time of the DeFeo murders. Day 7. Kathy dreams of being shot. George becomes irritable, withdrawn. He starts chopping wood obsessively, shaving less, sleeping less, watching the fire burn for hours. Day 10. The daughter, Missy, speaks to an imaginary friend, a pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. She calls it Jody. She says Jody lives in her closet. Jody doesn't like strangers. Week 3. Flies appear, hundreds of them, clustering in one room, despite the cold outside. Black gunk leaks from the walls. A crucifix on the wall rotates upside down. Week 4. George finds a hidden room in the basement, behind a shelf, painted red. No windows, no markings. The dog refuses to enter. George hears chanting from inside when alone. Then, the children begin screaming in their sleep. Kathy levitates above the bed. Scratch marks appear on her back. George sees figures moving past mirrors, reflections that don't match reality. On the final night, something changes. The walls seem to breathe. A chorus of voices rises from the floorboards. Blood drips from the ceiling. The house groans. Screams, human, inhuman, echo through the halls. They flee. They leave everything behind. Dishes on the table. Clothes in the drawers. They never return. Skeptics said it was a hoax, that the Lutzes made it up for fame and money. But those who entered the house afterward, parapsychologists, investigators, even skeptics, admitted something felt wrong there. Cameras malfunctioned, recordings caught static, and whispers. The house still stands. It has new owners now. Quiet ones. They don't speak to the press. They say the house is peaceful, but the truth? The truth is that no one ever really leaves the house on 112 Ocean Avenue, because houses remember. The recordings still exist. You can hear them, if you dare. A girl's voice, distorted beyond recognition, growling, screaming, pleading, and sometimes laughing. They say it was possession. Others say it was something much worse. The village of Klingenberg, Germany, 1976. A quiet place tucked in the hills of Bavaria. That spring, it would become the stage for something terrifying. Anneliese Michel was 23. She had grown up devout, Catholic, gentle, bright. She played piano, wanted to teach, but her suffering began when she was 16. She started having seizures, blackouts, lost time. Doctors diagnosed epilepsy. 4 years she tried medications, carbamazepine, phenytoin, sedatives. Nothing helped. The visions came anyway. She said she saw faces, devilish, twisted, heard voices, felt hands around her throat when no one was there. Her parents noticed changes: self-harm, religious obsession, starvation. She screamed at crucifixes, refused to eat holy bread, drank her own urine, slept on a stone floor in the middle of winter. By 1975, Anneliese and her family no longer believed it was a medical condition. They believed she was possessed, not by one, but by 6 demons. She named them: Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and Fleischmann, an excommunicated priest from the 1500s. 2 local priests were authorized by the bishop to begin an exorcism. It would span 10 months, 67 recorded sessions. She convulsed, shrieked, barked like a dog for hours, tore clothes off her body, tore wallpaper off the walls, bit into wooden furniture, fasted until her weight fell below 30 kilograms. The voices, multiple, sometimes simultaneous, mocked the priests. "She belongs to us," they said. "Stop praying." But Anneliese still prayed, always, through bloodied lips and broken teeth. She begged for forgiveness, asked to die, said she was suffering on behalf of sinners. By June 1976, she could no longer walk. Her knees were shattered from genuflecting hundreds of times a day. Her face was bruised, hollow. Her organs were shutting down. She died on July 1st, age 23, cause of death: malnutrition and dehydration. The trial shook Germany. Her parents and the priests were charged with negligent homicide. The defense claimed Anneliese was conscious, consenting, that her death was not theirs, but her own choice, a spiritual martyrdom. The prosecution presented audio, photographs, medical records, said it was a failure of treatment. A young woman with mental illness, failed by her faith and family. The jury found the priests and parents guilty, but gave suspended sentences. Anneliese was buried with a rosary in her hands. Years later, her grave became a pilgrimage site. Some claimed they saw miracles there. Others saw only tragedy. Today, her story lives on, in books, in documentaries, in the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. But the real horror isn't the growls on tape. It's the blurred line between faith and psychosis, between belief and responsibility, between spiritual warfare and human suffering. They say the church never approved another exorcism like hers. And yet, people still listen to the tapes. They still hear the screams. Sometimes they ask, was she ever truly alone in that room? And sometimes they don't want the answer. The first thing you notice about the house is that it doesn't make sense. Stairways rise straight into ceilings. Doors open into walls. Windows peer into nothing. It sprawls in every direction, 146 rooms, built over 4 decades. And no plan, no symmetry, no rest. They say it was built by the dead. But the truth, as always, begins with a gun. Sarah Lockwood Winchester was once among America's wealthiest women. She married into the Winchester rifle empire, the gun that won the West. Her husband, William, was heir to it all. But death came swiftly. First, their infant daughter died. Then William, cancer. Sarah was left alone, with unimaginable wealth and unbearable sorrow. She traveled west, seeking meaning. In San Jose, California, she bought an unfinished farmhouse. That's where the building began. Day and night, week after week, year after year, for 38 years. No blueprints, no master plan, just constant construction. When asked why, Sarah said she was told to, by spirits. Legend says she visited a medium in Boston, that the psychic told her she was cursed, that all those killed by Winchester rifles, Native Americans, Civil War soldiers, innocents, had turned against her. The only way to appease them? Build a home, forever. And so she did. She hired carpenters to work in shifts, around the clock, even holidays. If a wing was finished, she'd tear it down and start again. She built staircases to nowhere to confuse spirits, rooms within rooms to distract them, sealed chimneys, crooked mirrors, trapdoors. Each element a defense, and she never stopped. Visitors described her as kind but distant. Shrouded in black, she wandered the halls, always in mourning. She held seances in a small room with only 1 entrance and 3 exits. She believed the spirits gave her instructions each night, and each morning new blueprints would appear. She refused to sleep in the same room twice, changed bedrooms every night. To stay ahead of them, people said she was mad, but the house kept growing. By the time she died in 1922, the mansion had 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms. It was incomplete, just as she had intended. And what remains? The house still stands, open to the public, a living labyrinth. Visitors say they hear footsteps on floors above, where no one walks. Some feel cold hands brushing past. Cameras fail. Compasses spin. In one hallway, a door opens into a steep drop to the garden below. No warning, just empty space. Some believe Sarah trapped the ghosts inside her walls. Others believe they still roam, looking for the woman who tried to outbuild them. And every now and then, very late at night, a faint hammering can be heard in the walls, as if the construction never stopped, as if the house is still listening, waiting. You've heard the reports, you've imagined the shadows, but the silence in between is where the horror lives. Some say these stories are warnings, others say they're just myths. But if you find yourself glancing over your shoulder tonight, if something calls to you from the stillness, then you already know. Not everything stays buried.